Hey, this is Tavis Bollinger at Reformation Heritage Books. Thanks for watching this interview with Simonetta Carr. Simonetta is one of our most prolific authors. In addition to her numerous Christian biographies that she's written for us, we now have her church history. This has been a number of years in the making, and we're really excited to bring this out. This interview, we talk about her history growing up, when she developed her passion for writing, her life growing up in Italy, and even things like mental health issues, which is an important topic to her heart. So thanks for watching, and if you are interested in the book, head on over to heritagebooks.org, where you can learn more about church history, all of her many biographies that she's written, some books for women, and you can also very soon hear the audio of this interview and some others on the Modern Puritan podcast, which is forthcoming. Thanks for watching this interview with Simonetta Carr. I want to start with a question that I didn't send you beforehand, but I'm quite intrigued by, which is it true that when you were young, you had a crush on Julius Caesar?
Who told you that?
Well, it is on your blog, so...
It's on my blog.
I should say that I did some extensive research, but I simply...
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a lot you did about writing the Cleopatra book.
Yes. Yeah, I was in, I forgot, high school or maybe even middle school, because in Italy we learned Latin in middle school. Well, we did. I don't know if they still do that. We started to learn Latin in middle school. And so we were reading the Bello Gallico. We read some in Latin, not the whole thing, but I was very interested and I read the whole thing, I think in Italian. And I was amazed. Now, I didn't know, in those days, it's like I didn't think about, he was practically doing genocide over here. And he had a woman in every city, or I didn't even think of those things. I was thinking of how ingenious he was in his military tactics. It's really funny for a 14-year-old to be impressed by military tactics, but I really liked him a lot.
Would you say that your love for the past, let's just call it that, you love the past, you are a historian. Would you say that began with Caesar or prior?
Prior. I just love the past from the start, I think. I don't know if it's my parents, it could have been, my parents were both teachers. My mother taught Italian and a lot of other stuff, Latin, philosophy. She had 4 degrees. My father taught math, but they were both, like my father was, he was a friar before getting married. So he was telling me Bible stories, and my mother was reading from Greek mythology. So I had a mixture of things. But I remember as a child, we would go on vacation, and I was an only child for 7 years. And I just let my imagination go wild because I was by myself. So I would imagine if we were in a field, for example, I would imagine myself to be either a Roman, or somebody in the Middle Ages or Renaissance or something, I imagined a whole story, I would go behind the bush and imagine an army passing by or something like that. Yeah.
That's very interesting. My daughters pretend that they're mythological, characters. But you're rooting yourself in the actual history. That's very interesting.
Well, it's actually easier in Italy because we have castles everywhere, ruins everywhere. So yeah, we grow up like this.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, when did you actually begin writing? Because you just talked
Yeah.
about imagination. You've talked about
Mhm.
learning to read Latin and Greek.
Mhm.
But when did you begin to actually take those thoughts in your head and put them down
Mhm.
on paper?
I began writing very, very early, thanks to my mother, because she, well, the first thing she did is teach me to read and write at a very, very early age. And then I think she bought me a typewriter when I was 4 years old or something. But then she would use me to write letters instead of whenever she had to write a thank you letter, she would dictate it to me as a child. So it would look so cute, thanking a person. And here was the child thanking the person. And I learned a lot through her dictating things to me. And I think I'm sure it was already there that I like to write, but I think all that helped me. Sometimes she would help me with homework, with essays or things like that, and it would just really help me. And in school, that was best. My best grades were in writing. I would have like the equivalent of an A plus in writing, and then B's and C's and everything else. Funny thing, I had this equivalent of a C in history. And I didn't like to learn dates and wars so much. It's like it looked like there was one war after the other, and I didn't understand the relevance of wars. So just learning one war after another didn't appeal to me. If they had explained it like Julius Caesar did, then maybe would have helped me a little bit more. But it's okay. Yeah.
So that
So
sounds,
yeah, I
yeah.
was writing a lot, and as a teenager, I would write poems, and I just always liked writing. I just never thought I would write a book ever. And I know my mother, she was also a writer. She wrote a few things. And she told me, don't write unless you have something to say. And I basically thought I never had anything to say. So, I mean, nothing important for others to bother reading. So I wrote letters. That I enjoyed a lot, writing lots of letters. And then I translated. I started to translate when I finally learned English well enough. Then I started to translate, and that to me was like writing, because you kind of have to rewrite when you translate. You can't just do it literally. So that's it. And I never thought I would write a book.
So on that topic of writing, and I'm starting to form some connections here, I think, because it's, you write primarily for younger readers, for children.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I want to ask you why that is, but also it seems like there might be in your background somewhat of a desire to rectify your poor experience in your history learning as a child, where it was just about facts and figures. But what you're presenting in your books is much deeper and comprehensive than that. It's a narrative.
Yeah, it could be, because I like I said, in school I didn't do really well on history, but then at home we had lots of encyclopedias. My mother had so many books, and I had my favorite was an encyclopedia of it was like biographical encyclopedias, and that I like, because I like to learn about people, what they thought, why they did what they did, rather than just dates, like I was saying. So yeah, that's possible.
So your parents, it sounds like, had quite an influence on you. Your mother being of a philosophy background, your father a friar, or previous friar.
Yes, yes.
Prior friar. How much influence do they have on just the way that you think and process information and try to understand people?
I think my mother had the most influence in that respect. She read so much. Our house, basically, we had very few empty walls in the house. It was all wallpapered with books, with shelves.
Yeah.
We even had a shelf in the bathroom with books. Everywhere we had books. But also she was a teacher, and I learned a lot from her. And this is something that I really admired in my mother, but I don't think I would ever be able to achieve. When she taught or when she talked to people, any person, even if we want to buy bread or whatever, she would be so interested in the person.
Mm.
And she would just listen, and you could tell just her body language, she would just, you could see she was so interested in the person she was talking to. And I learned a lot, but I don't think I've ever achieved that level of engagement with others. But it didn't influence me. Yeah, just being curious about other people.
That's very interesting, because it seems as though, based upon the genre of writing that you've chosen, or been drawn to, whichever, is that in many ways, perhaps you mirror that interest that your mother has, but hers was in living people right in front of her, and yours is in people who have passed. Their time on earth has gone. So how do you do that? How do you engage with people that are not around anymore? Or to take the example of Cleopatra, or even to bring it close to home, which is your book on church history, which we have here, is which is numerous individuals. How do you do it? How do you engage with them in the way, or close to the way, that your mother did with people around your town?
Well, with the church history book, I couldn't do it too much because it's such a overview of everything that I couldn't really devote too much time to each person. But in my other biographies, I do, and I enjoy it a lot. It's just reading about them and reading what they wrote, and just trying to understand the person rather than just reading what somebody writes about them, but just seeing why they said what they said, or why they did what they did.
Can you talk me a bit through your research process? How is it that you go about diving deep into these lives? So on the one hand, I know that, as essentially a scholar, a historian, you dive deep into these people's lives, but then you pull out these riches and this information, and you're able to then take that information and present it in a package that my children could read. What is that process of research like for you? So that's question number one. And then question number two is, what then is the writing process like? So answer those in whichever manner you wish.
Well, I think it started with my initial vision was to write this series of biographies. I had an idea exactly what I wanted to do with them, because I was homeschooling at the time, and I just started to learn church history, which I never really heard before. And when I was learning church history in my church, there was an intern from Westminster Seminary. He was giving classes on church history. And I was fascinated, but it also, because I was using a curriculum for my children that was based on history. And I said, well, church history should be in it, you know, and also not just church history, but I was thinking the history of theology, because I could see how what people were teaching about theology, whether correctly or incorrectly, influenced a lot the mindset of the people of that time. And I said, this should definitely be taught. And I couldn't find books about that. So that, I think the first book was John Calvin, but the whole series started with me not finding books in the bookstore. And I heard that a lot of books start that way. And I actually tried to get other people to write these books, not me, but nobody did it, so I did. And RHB has been amazing in picking up my vision, because I don't know if other publishers would have. But my vision was to focus on their theology and how it affects us, and how that theology grew at the time when they were alive. I was just curious about all this. And I thought children should know. And I was reading books for children about artists, scientists, but even politicians, and people in different walks of life. And I noticed that they were high quality, first of all, and then they were really focusing on issues that some may find difficult for children, especially when you start talking about scientists or politicians. But they did it, and I said, well, we can do it with theology. So my initial vision was to talk about theologians and to focus on one point of their theology. I think for example, Augustine, there was the second one that I did. I wanted to focus on his debate with the Pelagius, and then I said, okay, that's my focus. And then I tell the story and everything else, but that's the focus of the book. So when you start with that, with a focus and a goal, and you know what you want, I think it's easier. You do your research related to that. But then, I have to learn. I wanted to learn about him as a person. So I had to read mostly like his letters. That helped me a lot. Because in the letters you kind of see more, well, the confessions too, obviously, but also the letters, you see what kind of person he was. And thankfully he was like Luther, he just told a lot about himself. So that made it easy. But trying to understand who he was, and then the time when he lived. And then, like you were saying, to make it easy for children. So I wanted to tell the story of this person and then insert the theology. And basically, I tried to do that in one paragraph, because otherwise the kids are not going to read 3 pages of theology. And so to me, that's a challenge. And that's actually one of the portions I like the best about writing these books, because it's a challenge. And I say, how am I going to condense all that into one paragraph? Yes. it's interesting. I just like it.
Of the various people who you have written specific biographies on,
Mm.
which would you say, or which person would you say was the most challenging? Because you just said that Calvin and Luther, they wrote a lot about themselves. You can get quite into their head and life, but not everyone was like that. So who's been the most challenging?
Irenaeus. We don't know anything about him.
Yeah.
He was born. He went to Lyon. He wrote a book, and he died. That we know. Well, he wrote a couple of letters. Yeah, he wrote to a pope, but really, we don't know much about him. But I really wanted to do it, and I remember Dr. Beakey said, "Are you sure you can do it? How do you do a biography?" And so I just want to do it, and many times I say I want to do it. I get RHB to sign the contract, and then I say, "What did I do? What have I done? How am I going to do this?" So anyway, yeah, I panicked for a moment, but I had some people helping me, and that's another thing, another amazing part of my work that I love is contacting scholars. They're amazing. They love to talk to me. I'm not a scholar. I'm not, you keep saying historian. Yeah, my mother. but they talk to me, and some talk to me for a long time, and they share a lot with me, and they answer the craziest questions. Because then when I have to give directions to the artist, those are the challenging questions. So, what did they wear? Did he have a beard, or did he not have a beard? Yeah. Lots of little questions like that, and they answer. So yeah, somebody helped me a lot with the Irenaeus book. It was a challenge, but I included some of his friends, and sometimes when I don't have enough material from the biography, I start scanning their writings. So I went through Irenaeus's against the heresies.
Yeah.
So many times until I could find portions that could appeal to children.
Yeah.
And they all do. You have to look a lot, but they do. And so he had some examples. Whenever he had an example, I included it in my book. It's a lot of work, but it's something I like. Yeah. I do a lot of other things in life. I teach Italian, and I translate, and I do other things. But this one I particularly like doing. Yeah.
Let's talk about the work. So what is your writing process like? To ask it another way, how do you balance all of these other responsibilities that you have?
I don't.
Because I know for a lot of writers, or I should say, especially for aspiring writers, there's this desire to say something. You feel like you have something to say. And but then it's always this tension of, well, when am I going to find the time? How do I now slot this into my life? If I'm not a professional writer already, or even if I am, how do I find the time to make this happen?
Right, that's always a challenge, because writing doesn't pay usually. You have to be a super writer. You have to sell a lot of books, and or maybe write for top magazines that pay a lot of money to make it a career, and to make it so that you can bring money into your family. And in my case, I had 8 children, and so there was always a need for me to, for a long time, I was just focused on the kids, of course. But then after, when the kids were older, I started to look for ways to help my husband, because we had a lot of expenses. And so teaching, translating, especially documents, that brings some money in. So yeah, there's always that, because you can't let go of work that brings some money when you need it. And there's could be different challenges. For some people, could be other things. Maybe some people, the kids are still young, or you have parents that you need to care for. And, there's many challenges.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think for me, writing, it's something I just like to do. So I find the time. I do it when I can.
Despite the
It's
challenge,
not, yeah,
it's work, but it's work that you enjoy.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
whenever I can, I read lots of books. I don't read many novels. I read more nonfiction, but I read a lot. And do my research that way. And then sometimes I sit down to write, and sometimes when I have those paragraphs, sometimes I just think about them as I clean my house or do the dishes or something, because that takes time. It's not something that you just sit down and write. I have to see how to condense into one paragraph a lot of doctrine, basically.
Yeah. So I'm curious to know then, what made you go from writing these individual biographies, which are digestible without being watered down, and they're written they're a high level of writing, though accessible with great artwork. So you go from those to then, as I've shown before, church history, which this is quite a bit larger. It's expansive. It's more than just one person. It's hundreds of people throughout the history of the church. What was the motivation behind turning your focus to a bigger project like church history?
I don't know. A fool's errand.
Were you unsatisfied with the resources that you had come across in your homeschooling, or what led you to that?
Actually, no. Actually, one publisher asked me once to write something about church history, and something about the whole of churches. And I said, no, no way I can do that. But I thought maybe with somebody else. I started to entertain the thought, but she wanted it by a certain date. And I said, no, there's no way I can do that. So she found somebody else. She did something completely different. But I started to think about it. And then I talked to Jay at RHB. I said, I wonder if there's a need. Just through the ideas, I thought maybe it could be that there is a need to, now that I have all these biographies, to kind of join the dots between them. And he said, well, if you want to put something together, we would just not give you any deadline. I said, wow, that's good.
Maybe that's
I
not
said, okay. I said, good. I can have to think, and I started to look at books for children on history in general. What kind of books did I like? Which ones appealed to me? And would any of them be translated into a church history book? I just started to think about it, and then slowly. And then what happened is that the Alliance of Confessive Evangelicals asked me to write a blog, a weekly blog, and it's called Cloud of Witnesses, and about different people in church history. So I kind of combined the two ideas. I said, okay, well, if I am already writing a blog every week, I'm already reading about different people. So who knows, maybe while I'm studying for this blog, I find ideas for this book. But I was taking it very, very easily, very slowly, and taking my time. And then I think it was like in 2016 or so that I started to get the idea, because I remember the other person wanted it for 2017. And then 2020, somebody from RHP, I won't say who, said, "Is it done yet?" What do you mean, is it done? He said I could take as long as I want. But they started to, I wouldn't say put pressure, but like show a lot of eagerness to see it done. Like they showed they really wanted to have it soon. And I started to think, okay, maybe I should try. It was very difficult to finish it up. I never felt ready to let it go. Yeah. I think actually I let it go a bit too soon, and then I made too many corrections after. I drove people crazy, and then I told them, I told you I wasn't ready. Anyway, yeah. So that's how it happened.
Yeah, so what was the total time then? Start to finish?
5 years. 5 years.
Yeah. So
I mean, if you count the thinking time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're happy to have it done, though, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Never again.
What would you say that in your process of writing church history, you learned the most about church history? In particular, whether you want to say it's about a certain individual or maybe a period of history of the church, where do you find that your deficiencies in understanding were most rectified by the writing of this book?
I don't know if anything was really rectified, but I think what I learned the most was that we are a church family from the start to now. And also when I started to write about the last 2 centuries, I started to do research about Africa, Asia, South America. That was when the deadline started to tick, and I didn't like. That was really, really difficult to do all that research at the end. But I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed seeing a wider scope of the church in history and geographically now. And to understand I think I understand more that we are all working together. I would say like a symphony, working together with different notes and different instruments and different because I mean, take away the heretics, but anybody else, maybe we don't agree completely on everything, but we're all trying. We're all, loving the Lord, studying the Bible, trying to get to the truth. And I would say many people are sincere. And then also, when you do that and you start seeing church history more as like I was saying, as a symphony or as a church family that grows and that learns, then you also see the Lord working more, and it gives you more faith that he will continue to work. And in fact, in my book, that's, I would say, is the theme. I don't know if I kept it throughout, but it starts that way. It starts with Jesus's promise: I will keep my church, I will build my church, and then I end it on the same note. Now that you've seen all this, you can see how the Lord really did keep his promise.
It's a wonderful message, what you just communicated. I know that there can sometimes, or has been, a tendency within the Reformed community to look at church history as beginning at Jesus, ending at Paul, and starting up again at Luther.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but I mean, the fact that you wrote on Irenaeus, for example, that in itself shows, hey, no, the Lord has been working throughout. I know that when I did my PhD at Durham in New Testament, the first class I took was on the Apostle Paul and his interpretation. And again, the class started at about Luther, I think. And I said, well, what about all those years in between? And there's just been a lack. I think we've wanted to be somewhat hands off. To like pre-Reformation happenings. But
I think it's even worse in the wider evangelical world. I think the Reformed churches I've seen, at least they make an attempt to learn about what's in between. But in the wider evangelical world, I was invited to have some classes for children on church history in a just big evangelical church here in San Diego. And I had maybe 5 people coming. And then one of them said, I was following my books. So I started with Irenaeus, and I started to teach church history that way. And when I started with Irenaeus, some lady said, but wasn't he Catholic? And so I started to explain, okay, in those days, there wasn't like Catholic and Protestant. So I started to explain a little bit, but she said, I'm going to the bathroom. She never came back.
Wow.
So I still remember that. So I think there's a lot of that mentality, but there's a lot to learn, and I think I would like for the children to take this book. I tried very hard not to be too partial. I don't think I succeeded completely, but but I try to be a little fair when introducing other sides, other beliefs. And I would like for the children to be challenged, not to just get to the point when you see the Catholic Church, during the Reformation, oh, bad. Okay, let's go with the good people. But say, okay, why did they say that? And then you kind of understand, okay, yeah, I can see that, but and then it helps you. It helps you to be stronger on your convictions if you really recognize the other side.
Yeah. Yeah, you talk about Eastern Orthodoxy as well, which
a little.
have
I'm
to,
not
because
good enough.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm not knowledgeable enough, but I tried.
yeah, yeah. So going forward, now that church history has been released, which we're very excited about over here at Reformation Heritage, what is your hope for the book?
Well, part of it I've said, I hope a lot of children read it. I hope families use it at home somehow in their curriculum if they are homeschooling or I don't know, reading together, because there's a lot of questions. I ask a lot of questions and I try not to answer them. I try to just let the children answer. I'm not completely, but somebody said, somebody who read my book, the part about Middle Ages, said that I was eminently fair. So I said, wow. I really tried. I know I didn't always succeed, but I tried to let the children figure things out. So I think that's my hope, that they do think about issues, that they don't just go through it like I was saying, good, bad,
Right.
but really understand why did the church do this, and then also and especially to see how the Lord preserved the church in spite of all that, because you see so many things. You can read the book, you can get discouraged when you read church history. And I've read books, not for children, but that kind of emphasize the negatives. But if you really look at it, the Lord has kept this church in spite of it. So
Would
think
you
that's
say that
encouraging.
would you say that perhaps that's the strength or the real value of your contribution to the many church history books out there, is that you're asking questions without answering them? Meaning you're encouraging.
I'm trying.
Yeah, you're encouraging
Yeah.
children and others as well. I mean, I've enjoyed reading it as well. You're encouraging readers to think and
Yes.
to consider, and not just digest for them what they should think.
I think for children, yes. Of course, for adults, you have fantastic resources that are not partial, that are probably more fair than mine. But for children, I think there is a tendency to lead the children into answering questions a certain way. And I might have done it too. It's, I don't say that I was completely, it's really difficult to be impartial when you write church history, when you have strong convictions. But I tried, and I think it's at least a start. That's the way I see it. It's not perfect. People may find mistakes. I don't know, because I found mistakes after, so who knows. But I think it's at least a start, and it's something that I don't think it's there for children. And then another thing that I think it's unique at this point is that it's the global church that I included at the end, and that's not usually included in church history books for children. We tend to stick to the European history, European and American. Europeans coming here.
Yeah. So what's next for you? I mean, this is a huge accomplishment. Congratulations. We're very happy about it. What's forthcoming?
rest. Well, I'm not gonna do any more massive books like this, so I think my life will be a little easier. But I will continue my biographies. I don't know. I keep telling RHB, this is probably it. And they say, oh, no, we want you to write more. And I keep saying, how much room do they have, these parents, on shelves, for my books? But
we have lots of room.
But anyway, I'll keep going as long as I can, I guess, with those. And then I would like to do another of the, I did a book, Questions Women Ask.
Yes.
That was not for children, but I would like to do part 2. And so if I have more time, I already have some chapters written. So if I can, I'll do another part of that.
Yeah. Let me transition for a minute to another topic, because you've written about your family's experience with schizophrenia, and mental health is an issue that is really coming to more attention within the church. We have people like Grant McCaskill up at Aberdeen University who's writing on autism in the church. You had a schizophrenic child. I have an autistic child. There's lots of stories out there. There's lots of people looking for help. Is this an area where you may consider writing more?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I will write another book necessarily. Maybe I wrote more articles since then, about some topics that were not really treated fully in my books. Like I wrote a couple for Modern Reformation, one on the Bible and other mental illness and the Bible, mental illness and demons, and just to touch on those things, because many people just equate mental illness with demons immediately. So I did some more research on that and wrote some articles. So maybe articles like that. I don't know. I don't know if I write another book, but yeah. I written articles. I wrote one about what it's like to be married to a person with mental illness. So I interviewed wives, and I'm very interested in that, in finding out more how the church is coping with these things. And I personally, I have a lot of, I'm very optimistic about a lot of things, about church history, and also about the church, what the church can do. I think the church has a tremendous potential to help people with mental illness. They haven't used it as much as they could have, but I think they have a tremendous potential, because they're a community, they're a family, and they have what's lacking. I mean, the family, the individual family can help, a doctor can help, a psychologist can help, but the church as a community, it's something that is missing, especially here in the West. We don't have these communities that surround the person and support the person. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there.
So this is sort of the modern equivalent of, in the past, the church was known for hospice and charity. And we've all heard the stories of the church rescuing babies that were just tossed into the street, or
Right.
pre-Reformation even, the church was known for its charity and assistance to the poor. And so are you saying that in today's day and age, where a lot of those things are now taken care of, we don't have those issues? Maybe
Yes.
mental health is the big looming dark cloud that the church
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Because it takes more. Like I saw myself, like as a family, the family is very, very important for a person with mental illness, because the family can support and can help. But it's a strain on the family too. And then you have the medical system that can help depending on the issue. But then there's no real, I think, a community of people that care for you, that love you. I think that will help a lot. And when you were giving examples, I was thinking, go back even more, go to the early church with Basil of Cappadocia, right? He started a hospital in those days when there were no hospitals like that, people, healthcare was completely different in those days. But he started a free hospital where he helped people who were sick. They had problems with leprosy in those days. But actually, they did also have some mental illnesses, and Chrysostom talks about that.
Yeah.
And so they opened these things, and there was the Emperor Julian that was telling his priests, because he was the only emperor that didn't become a Christian at that time. So he was telling pagan priests, why can't you do that? And so that was something that Basil provided that the society at this time was not providing. And I think our churches have the potential to do that. They have to get rid of a lot of prejudice and a lot of wrong ideas they have about mental health. But if they can do that, and I've spoken in churches, the churches that invited me to speak are churches who cared. And so that's what makes me optimistic about it, because I could see those churches were really trying. So if you don't see it, you only read about people's bad experiences in the churches, so you can get pretty discouraged. But there are churches where the people are really trying to be a loving community and to understand. And it's not a matter of understanding for everything, church history and mental illness. And we just want to understand each other. We just want to learn and continue to learn.
It's good for me to hear your heart on this. It's encouraging as a father of someone who deals with mental illness. Well, I hope you write more articles and maybe even a book on this topic. Maybe, I know your book on schizophrenia was to a more general audience, but this is the editor in me. Perhaps we can get you to write a church-focused book like Grant McCaskill's on autism in the church. But no pressure.
No deadline, right?
Well, Simonetta, I'm so grateful for the time that you've given me to just talk really in general about you as a person and as an author.
And we did talk a bit about church history, your new book, but you have so many more resources that I know our families benefited from and that others can too. I hope that you keep writing for as long as you wish to and can. And just thank you very much for this time.
Oh, thank you. It was very nice. And I hope the book is as good as you are describing it. I don't know. I think authors, I don't know. I imagine authors have self-doubts at times, but yeah,
No,
I hope the book.
if the
I hope the
intention
book
of
helps.
no, absolutely. I mean, if the intention of church history, the book, is to show to children that the underlying foundation of the Lord always at work, despite the mistakes that have been made along the way and are still being made.
Yeah.
That alone is a message that will really build up a future generation and the generation after that. So
Yeah.
I hope really good things for this book you've written. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.